You didn't find this video. This video found you because your spirit called it in, and you know it. There's something inside you that's been stirring for years. A quiet whisper that refuses to go silent. A sense that your life has never been random, even when nothing made sense. You were born with something sacred, and that something is starting to rise. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and comment 777 below if your soul knows this message is for you. Because by the time you finish watching, that stuck situation in your life might finally move. Let me tell you something that you've always felt but never heard out loud. You were a message before you had a voice. You were marked before the world knew your name. Your destiny was written in divine ink, long before you could even speak it. From the very beginning, you felt different, not better, not worse, just different. You watched the world like an observer trapped in someone else's movie. You heard the silence behind the noise. You noticed signs others called coincidence. You carried a depth that had no words, only knowing. Why? Because you were born with a calling, and that calling found you before you even knew what to call it. It showed up in dreams, in déjà vu, in moments of intense emotion that made no sense to the people around you. You cried over things no one else noticed. You felt energy in rooms before anyone said a word. You saw through masks. You sensed the hidden. But instead of celebrating it, they tried to silence it. Too sensitive, too intense, too spiritual. They didn't understand because they weren't designed to. Your soul was created to carry messages from higher places, to feel the divine currents before the waves even touched the earth, to be a vessel of alignment in a world that thrives on distortion. That's why the world's noise never satisfied you, because your frequency wasn't built for small talk and surface level. You were made for sacred revelation, for prophetic resonance, for divine communication. And now, that calling you've always felt but never fully understood is activating. You've been feeling the shift lately, haven't you? Strange synchronicities, repeating numbers, sudden awareness, moments of insight that feel like lightning from another world. This is not random. It's not your imagination. It's not just your intuition. It's the prophetic part of you, the part heaven planted, finally waking up. You've walked through darkness because you were meant to carry light. You've been misunderstood because your mission isn't meant to be explained. It's meant to be revealed. You've been hidden because what's sacred is always protected before it's released. And now, you're being released. You're remembering what the world tried to make you forget. You're not lost. You're aligning. You're not crazy. You're awakening. And this is just the beginning. Because you weren't meant to blend in. You were born to speak things no one else could hear. Because they weren't supposed to. Only you could. So let me say it again for your soul to feel it. This time, you were a message before you had a mouth. You were a frequency before you were effect. You were prophecy before you were pain. And your pain, it didn't silence the calling. It shaped it. You're not becoming powerful. You've always been. You're just remembering. And now, the remembering becomes the reveal. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and type 777 in the comments, because your prophetic gift is rising. And this is where your awakening begins. Have you ever wondered why you've always felt things so deeply? Why the smallest moment could move your heart in ways others couldn't understand? Why your tears came quickly, even when nothing seemed wrong? Why you could walk into a room and instantly feel the tension without a word being spoken? That is not a flaw. That's a sign that you were born with something the world couldn't name, and because they couldn't name it, they tried to shame it. Comment, my heart always knew, if you've felt this since childhood. Like your emotions weren't weakness, they were wisdom. You see, chosen one, your emotional sensitivity has always been a sacred language, a way your soul communicated with the divine. You weren't just emotional, you were tuned in. You weren't just too sensitive, you were spiritually awake in a world still asleep. That lump in your throat you couldn't explain, that wasn't anxiety, that was alignment. That heartbreak that took you longer to heal from, that wasn't weakness. That was your spirit refusing to harden, because your heart was designed to heal others, not turn cold. You felt things deeper because you were sent to move deeper. The tears you cried in silence, they watered the roots of someone else's breakthrough. The heaviness you carried alone, it wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Because God knew you couldn't carry the weight of a prophetic calling with a numb heart. So He allowed you to feel everything, to cry when others didn't, to sense danger others walked right into, to carry compassion that confused people, because they weren't meant to understand your mission. You weren't made to ignore pain. You were created to transform it. That's why people have always come to you with their problems, even strangers. They sense something sacred in your presence. They open up without knowing why, because your aura, your spirit, your light, it carries healing even when your mouth stays silent. And that sensitivity, that was never meant to break you. It was meant to build you, to carve space inside your soul for divine instruction, because those who feel deeply are the ones chosen to carry heaven's messages. You didn't just hear what people said, you heard what they meant. You didn't just see faces, you saw pain hiding behind eyes. You didn't just experience emotion, you translated it into truth. That's not weakness, that's prophetic sensitivity. But here's the thing the world never told you. In order to strengthen your gift, God had to let it be misunderstood. You had to feel what it meant to be too much, to be called dramatic, to be laughed at when you cried for something no one else noticed. Because that pain taught you discernment. It sharpened your boundaries. It refined your intuition. Now you don't just feel, you understand. You've learned to sit with discomfort without letting it consume you. You've learned to read energy like a second language. And you've learned that what once made you feel weak now makes you spiritually dangerous. Because a heart that can feel deeply is a heart that can also hear God clearly. And now, your heart is finally listening. Type "my sensitivity is my strength" in the comments if you know your emotions are divinely designed. You were sent here to carry more love than most people could understand, to break generational patterns with compassion, not chaos, to guide others out of confusion with the very empathy you once tried to hide. You didn't survive by hardening, you survived by staying soft in a world that wanted to make you cold. That's divine strength, that's emotional leadership, and that is why your sensitivity was always sacred. So no, chosen one, your feelings were never too much, they were the map. And now that you know how to read them, you're not just awakening, you're aligning. Because your prophetic gift doesn't just come through visions and dreams, it comes through your tears, your stillness, your love. You were sent to feel, so you could heal. And now, you will. Because this sensitivity, this beautiful burden you carry, it's becoming your greatest superpower. And this is where your inner clarity begins. Have you ever tried to stay quiet, but something inside you just wouldn't let you? Have you felt the urge to speak truth, even when your voice shook? Have you ever sat in silence, but your spirit screamed, "Say something, this matters"? Chosen one, that's not rebellion, that's revelation. You weren't made to be silent, you were sent to speak. Type "my voice carries purpose" in the comments if you know there's power in what you carry. From a young age, you knew how to read the room. But more than that, you knew how to call it out. You spoke on things others were too afraid to say. You questioned what others blindly accepted. You sensed lies before they had words. And even when your voice was met with resistance, you still spoke. That wasn't defiance, that was divine assignment. Because your voice was never meant to blend in. It was meant to break cycles. It was meant to disrupt darkness. It was meant to echo the truth in a world addicted to illusions. And that's why the enemy came for it. That's why you were mocked when you spoke with passion. That's why people tried to silence you when you asked the deeper questions. That's why you were told to calm down, to let it go, to just be quiet. But something in you refused to shrink. Something in you couldn't sit in silence, because silence would have betrayed your soul. You weren't built for passivity. You were built to carry prophecy. Even when your voice trembled, your words carried weight. Even when your throat tightened, your truth pierced through confusion. Even when you tried to water yourself down, you couldn't, because heaven had already filled you with fire. You are not loud for attention. You are loud for alignment. You don't speak just to be heard. You speak to awaken. You speak to ignite. You speak because your voice is the vibration that sets captives free. And you know this now. The reason you couldn't stay quiet wasn't because you were opinionated. It's because you were anointed. You were born to speak when silence is no longer holy. You were chosen to carry messages that shake atmospheres. Even your whispers stir something sacred in the room. That's not ego. That's energy. That's alignment. And yet I know, you've doubted it. You've questioned, who am I to say that? You've felt the trembling in your chest before speaking your truth. You've felt the loneliness of being the only one bold enough to say what others won't. But here's the truth. Chosen one, the voice inside you is not just yours. It's the echo of divine truth rising through your soul. It's the sound of ancestors cheering you on. It's the vibration of heaven moving through human form. You didn't find your voice. Your voice found you. It was always there, just buried beneath fear, shame, trauma, and tradition. But now, the veil is gone. The filter is gone. And what remains is power. If this resonates with your soul, type "I speak with divine fire" in the comments, because your silence is no longer safe. You've seen too much to stay quiet. You've felt too much to look away. You've endured too much to play small. You were sent to speak over dry bones, to remind people of who they are, to shake souls out of slumber. And it doesn't matter if they like your voice. They don't have to. They weren't called to it. But the ones you were sent to reach, they'll hear you. Because your voice was crafted for them. Your message was shaped in fire. Your words were written in the dark, but they shine like lightning. This is not the season to hesitate. This is not the time to whisper. This is your moment to roar. Let them feel you. Let them witness the voice that survived silence. Let them know your silence wasn't weakness. It was a pause. And now, the sound has returned. Not in noise, but in truth. Not in chaos, but in clarity. Because chosen one, the world doesn't need more noise. It needs your voice. And this is where your prophecy begins to speak. Have you ever woken up from a dream and felt like it was more than just imagination? Like your spirit had been somewhere while your body slept? Chosen one, those weren't just dreams. They were messages. They were divine downloads, pieces of a prophecy your soul remembered, even when your mind forgot. Type "I dream with purpose" in the comments if you've ever had visions, dreams, or symbols that stayed with you long after waking up. You see, from the very beginning, your dreams have always carried truth. Maybe you saw something before it happened. Maybe you dreamt of people before they entered your life. Maybe you woke up with a feeling heavy, clear, undeniable. That wasn't coincidence. That was communication. You were receiving spiritual codes, clues, confirmations. Because even when you felt blind in the physical, your soul could see in the spirit. You weren't just sleeping. You were traveling. You weren't just resting. You were receiving. And you know what's wild? You tried to explain them once, and people laughed. They told you it was just a dream, that it was your imagination, that it didn't matter. But deep down you knew better. Because those dreams came with weight. They came with presence. They came with emotion you couldn't shake. Chosen one, that's how heaven speaks to the awake ones, who are still in disguise. In the silence of night, when the world goes quiet, your soul becomes a signal. And heaven answers. You don't dream like others. Your dreams are visions. Your sleep is sacred space. Your rest is where prophecy rehearses itself. Let's go deeper. Have you ever dreamt of storms, floods, fires only to face chaos days later? Have you ever dreamt of people and suddenly they reappear or exit your life? Have you seen symbols, numbers, sacred places, light, shadows, stairways, ancient ruins and wondered, why me? It's because your spiritual memory is awakening. You're not just remembering the past, you're previewing the future. And that's what the world can't understand. They don't know what it feels like to wake up in tears, not because you're afraid, but because something sacred just touched your soul. They don't know what it means to be pulled from sleep with clarity, to write down what you saw because some part of you knows it mattered. Your dreams are not random. They're your soul's way of saying you've been here before. You've known this truth. You're not crazy, you're connected. Drop "My dreams are divine" in the comments if you've had these prophetic moments while asleep. And let's talk about that other kind of dream, not just what comes at night, but the visions that won't leave your heart. You dream of more purpose, more freedom, more love, more meaning. It's not just a desire, it's a divine blueprint pulling you forward. You've seen yourself doing something powerful, helping people, speaking truth, healing others, changing lives. You didn't make that up. Heaven showed you a preview of what you're becoming. Even when you forgot it, your dreams did. Even when life tried to bury it, your soul wouldn't let it go. That persistent pull, that wild vision, that holy ache for something more, that is your calling knocking on your chest in the form of a dream. The kind you can't explain, the kind that won't go away, the kind that follows you, even when you try to forget it. Chosen one, you don't just dream at night, you dream in the day. You dream with your eyes open, you dream in silence, because your spirit was designed to see the unseen, and the dreams you couldn't explain. They were the prophecy you were never meant to silence. They were the divine stirring that said, "Get ready, because it's coming." So from this day forward, don't downplay your dreams, don't ignore the messages, don't doubt the vision just because others can't see it. You weren't given the dream so they could understand it. You were given the dream so you could fulfill it. And this is where your prophetic memory starts to awaken your destiny. Have you ever asked yourself, why did everyone leave when I needed them the most? Why did the people you trusted disappear the moment your soul started shifting? Why did you feel abandoned in the season you needed support the most? Let me tell you a truth. They never told you. You weren't abandoned. You were positioned. Because when a prophetic calling is on your life, heaven doesn't always announce it with applause. Sometimes it announces it with silence. If you've ever walked through a season where it felt like nobody stayed, comment, "I was hidden, not forgotten." Chosen one, you had to be pulled away from the noise, because only in the quiet could you hear the whisper. Your isolation wasn't a punishment. It was an invitation to hear what the world had been drowning out. An invitation to tune your ears not to people, but to the divine. You were being separated so that heaven could speak clearly. Because in the middle of the crowd, you couldn't hear yourself. But in the silence, you began to remember the voice you always carried within. The voice of discernment, the voice of wisdom, the voice of truth. And when everything else fell away, that voice got louder. You didn't lose people. You lost distractions. You didn't lose opportunities. You lost misalignment. You didn't lose love. You lost what was blocking your connection to higher love, the sacred kind. Let me ask you this. How many nights did you cry in silence and still feel a peace that made no sense? How many times did you pray with nothing but tears and yet your heart felt heard? That's because you weren't alone. Heaven was closer in those moments than ever before. Because God speaks clearest in the cave. The prophets were trained in caves. The messengers were formed in deserts. And you were being refined in your own wilderness. You thought you were losing everything. But what you were really losing was everything that couldn't walk with you into your assignment. Type "The silence trained me" if you've ever grown stronger in seasons of solitude. Your hearing didn't activate in the crowd. It activated in the quiet. And while they thought you were breaking down in that isolation, you were actually breaking through. You learned how to sit with yourself, how to pray without words, how to hear truth from within, how to stop outsourcing your clarity and start trusting your own divine frequency. Because the gift of a prophetic calling is not always knowing more, it's hearing deeper. It's hearing what others miss. It's sensing what hasn't been said. It's feeling the message behind the moment. And none of that happens without isolation. You were separated so your sensitivity could sharpen. You were hidden so your hearing could heal. You were alone, so that when the world comes calling again, you'll know which voice belongs to God, and which voice is just noise. They'll wonder how you came back so clear, so focused, so wise, so sure. But they weren't with you in the wilderness. They didn't hear what you heard in the quiet. The instructions, the affirmations, the divine redirections. Chosen one, the silence made you strong. The stillness made you sacred. And now when God speaks, you don't just listen. You recognize the sound. You trust the frequency. You honor the assignment. You no longer chase clarity. you carry it. Because isolation didn't destroy you. It delivered you. It delivered you from false attachments, from noise disguised as love, from opinions pretending to be guidance. And now, you don't just hear with your ears, you hear with your spirit. You hear with your alignment. You hear with your surrender. And every time the world tries to pull you back into noise, you remember what the silence gave you. Your voice, your vision, your knowing. So the next time you feel alone, remember, heaven still speaks best in stillness. And this is where your spiritual authority begins. Chosen one, let's talk about your pain. The kind that kept you up at night. The kind you couldn't explain to anyone. The kind that made you question why you were even here. But what if I told you that pain wasn't random? That pain was your preparation. If you've been through a storm that left you different, type in the comments, "My pain gave me my voice." You see, people think messengers are born in comfort, but the truth is, messengers are born in chaos. You didn't get your wisdom from books. You got it from breakdowns. You didn't get your compassion from sermons. You got it from suffering. You didn't get your strength from applause. You got it from silence. Your pain was the curriculum. Your heartbreak was the classroom. Your tears were the teacher. Because when heaven chooses someone to deliver a message, it first gives them a story. Not just any story, a sacred story. One soaked in scars, one shaped in surrender, one sealed in survival. You've walked through things that should have taken you out, but they didn't. And not because you were the strongest, but because you were assigned. You were chosen not in spite of the pain, but through it. Type "I survived" for a reason. If you believe your story is someone else's rescue, let's go deeper. Every rejection you faced was heaven's redirection. Every betrayal you endured was a detox for your destiny. Every time they broke you, God was using it to build you. You didn't lose your value when you fell apart. You discovered it, because it was in your lowest moments that you started to hear truth clearly. It was when everything fell apart that you finally saw what mattered. It was when no one showed up for you that God showed you who you really are. And now, you're not just someone who survived the storm. You're someone who came out carrying a message for the ones still hurting, still hiding, still hoping. Because now when you speak, you don't speak from theory, you speak from transformation. Your words don't just sound good, they carry power, because they were forged in fire, refined in tears, anointed in silence. Chosen one, the pain wasn't just about you, it was passed through you, so others could heal from it. You're not just here to inspire, you're here to interrupt generational cycles. You're not just here to motivate, you're here to move people out of spiritual paralysis. And that's why the attacks came so strong. The enemy didn't want your message to get out. He tried to shut you up by shutting you down, but it didn't work, because even with a broken heart, you still loved. Even with tired hands, you still served. Even with unanswered prayers, you still believed. And that's why your voice is dangerous now, because you've seen hell and chose heaven anyway. You've lost everything and found yourself in the ruins. You've been overlooked, but heaven never took its eyes off you. You didn't come this far just to tell a story. You came this far to deliver a word. You are a messenger now, not by title, but by testimony. And your message, it's written in the places they tried to break you. It's carried in your posture. It's hidden in your presence. It's felt in your frequency. You are no longer just the one who went through it. You are now the one who speaks from it. And the people who once doubted you, they'll hear you now. Not because you're louder, but because you're clearer. Because pain has a way of purifying the prophetic. You don't need a pulpit. You are the sermon. You don't need credentials. You carry the oil. You don't need validation. Your scars are your proof. Chosen one. The pain didn't stop you. It started you. The tears didn't drown you. They baptized you. And now, you speak with fire. You are not a victim of what happened. You are a vessel of what's been healed. And this is why your voice matters now more than ever. Because someone out there is waiting to hear the message only your pain could deliver. And this is where your authority begins. Chosen one. You were never here just to exist. You were sent here to leave a mark. You didn't survive everything you've survived just to go back to normal, just to blend in, just to get by. No, You were born to leave behind something eternal, something that shakes generations awake, something that outlives your name. If you believe your life has a divine legacy, type in the comments, "I am building something heaven will honor." Let's get one thing clear. You were never meant to walk this earth and leave it unchanged. That restlessness in your soul, that hunger that won't quit, that inner voice that says, "There's more for me," that's not ambition, that's assignment. You are sent here to carry something through, a vibration, a message, a frequency, something your ancestors didn't finish. But now, through you, it will be fulfilled. Your legacy is not in what you own, it's in what you awaken. It's not in what you collect, it's in what you activate. It's in the lives you shift, the cycles you break, the truth you carry like fire in your bones. Because let's be honest, you've always felt like the first in your bloodline, the one who thinks different, feels deeper, speaks boldly, the one who couldn't conform even when it hurt. And now you know why. Because you're the one chosen to end what others couldn't escape. You're not just the light, you're the lighthouse, a guide for the lost, a signal to the scattered, a reminder to the weary. And that's your legacy. Not money, not fame, not validation, but spiritual evidence that you lived with purpose. And now, you no longer walk just for yourself. You walk for those still crawling, for those still silent, for those still praying for a breakthrough, just like the one you're living in. You are not here to repeat history, you are here to rewrite it. And the pages of your life, they're sacred scripture, written in surrender, carved in obedience, stamped in fire. When you leave this earth, it won't be silently, it won't be with regret, it won't be with a question mark, it will be with a legacy that shouts, "I showed up. I remembered who I was. I awakened everything heaven put inside me." Final CTA. If your spirit feels this deeply, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and type 88 in the comments. Because your legacy begins the moment you decide to walk in your assignment fully. No more shrinking, no more hiding, no more waiting for someone else to go first. You are the first. You are the light. You are the lineage changer. And now, heaven is watching. The world is listening, and your soul is speaking louder than ever before. You've walked through fire, you've danced with destiny, and now, you build the legacy, because the time isn't coming. The time is now. This is where your new story begins. This is the legacy you were born to leave.
God has placed 2 more divine messages on your screen. Tap to watch. Both videos carry powerful truths you shouldn't miss.